we go ahead and get started, Mr. Cope will be here soon. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes for the April 9th meeting were circulated email. Are there any comments, corrections?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chairman. Do I have a second? Kelly?
Second.
Thank you. Have a first and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. So approved. We have anybody here with public comment today? Nobody. You do have some people that signed in, but we set for public comment.
No, we just signed it as.
Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to comment on anything on the agenda today? If not, let's proceed to planning. 3.1 nonprofit transportation feasibility study update. Stephen Hughes. This is an informational meeting.
Yes. Well, good morning. One of the things that I believe we talked about recently at a previous meeting was that we're starting to implement the NWI 2050 Plus plan, and part of how we've been doing that is with the nonprofit transportation feasibility study. We worked with Trans Systems, who then also subbed Transport Pro, to look at what are the nonprofit needs for transportation in our area. Boys and Girls Club and Goodwill were partners on this, along with the Crown Point Community Foundation, Legacy Foundation of Lake County, and Porter County Community Foundation. So that was our sort of steering committee stakeholders. A survey was sent out. We had 22 that were interested in participating in that conversation. We brought those groups in for interviews to kind of discuss a little bit more in detail how they use transportation, how they would like to use transportation, and what problems they have with providing transportation. So we've had several that provide transportation directly, a few that find ways to get their clients where they need to go, and a few that really just don't have any mechanism to provide transportation. They rely on their clients having some way to get where they need to be for their meetings. Obviously, funding and insufficient staff were probably the two main reasons that an organization that would like to provide transportation were not available to. Some of them, it's a function of kind of where they are. Obviously, we all work with our attorneys and insurance companies. We know that insurance can be a challenge for that. And then also some of the groups were maybe a group with their need for transportation being sort of more in the evening when other transit operations aren't running at full capacity, or maybe aren't running at all. So, like I said, we had interviews with those groups. We found out sort of how many vehicles do they have, how much staffing do they have, what kind of downtime do they have, and is there any funding restriction? So for example, if your funding sources say, you know, we really just want to be in this community, so Chesterton, well, there's not a lot of flexibility to take people over then to Crown Point for something. But we got down to 6 agencies that we said, hey, you know what? These are ones that might work well to look at the next steps of this. And not that the other groups didn't have great services and great things that they're doing, but just that they're maybe not in a place for a pilot program for this. So then we talked about what would success look like. And more or less what we came up with, and there will be a finalized draft of this, but to solve the mobility gaps, especially for nonprofit clients, in a cost-effective way by leveraging the capacity of multiple providers. So the idea is not that this would replace our existing public transit operations, but that it would be a supplement available to nonprofit organizations. So what would that pilot program look like? We looked at 2 models for that. First was a broker model, where one organization represents the group of options for providing transportation. So if your organization has a need for transportation, you call the broker. The broker looks at who has vehicles available right then and says, hey, I think this would be a good fit, it's on your route, and then they can work that out. The other model is a centralized model where one provider or organization kind of takes on the role of something along the lines of what we normally think of as demand response, but with it kind of focused on this nonprofit use. That would include dispatching software, and they would be the ones actually providing those rides. So they found case studies for these. The Ride Alliance in Longmont, Colorado is one that does this broker model. They've had good success with that, and that's sort of more the model that made most sense for the groups that we were talking with. The other model is that centralized model, and CTN is in Allen County, which is Fort Wayne area, and they handle for 85 partner organizations this service of transporting clients where they need to go. They started as a broker model, and over time they realized that the way things were going, it was going to work really well if they kind of centralized this into a model where they had control over the vans and didn't have to make as many sort of requests back and forth, but rather they would just operate for those needs. So the concept then is that, you know, whoever, say it's Boys and Girls Club, is requesting a ride, they go to the broker who looks at all the nonprofits, and Boys and Girls Club might be one of the nonprofits that they're looking at to see if they have the capacity for a ride. Obviously, if they're requesting that ride, they probably don't on that one, but you know, sometimes when you see it all laid out, it shows up that you do have that capacity and you didn't realize it. And then the broker gets back in touch with the group that requested the ride, saying, okay, here's who will pick you up, and they'll be there at such and such time. We did look at how much is this going to cost in terms of operating. You know, it ranges from there's just people calling back and forth to each other, trying, hoping, and praying to get a ride lined up, That's the least expensive option. And it goes all the way to a fully integrated system, similar to what our demand response operators have, maybe even a little bit more involved in terms of the dispatching software. What's being recommended is something somewhere in the middle, which I thought it was really interesting. If you're familiar with Google Forms and the Google Productivity Suite, that's a really interesting program that multiple people can be on it at the same time. You can see what's there. It could be a very simple solution for these needs. Obviously, if programming grows beyond that, it may need more than that, but that was a recommendation so far. Then the next piece is there will have to be a lot of discussion. Policy arrangements, agreements on memorandums of understanding. Attorneys, I'm sure, for each of these organizations will want to make sure that there's no problems that arise based on the wording of these MOUs. Who gets paid and how? How are we going to arrange group rides? And the process of it. How do you calculate the trips and whose vehicles are prioritized for what? As you might imagine, no one in the room was thrilled with the thought that a volunteer or staff member from Organization A would drive a vehicle from Organization B. That was pretty quick. That everybody was like, well, just because we have an extra vehicle, it doesn't mean that one would be available in that moment. So going forward, by the end of this month, we will have the implementation plan and be able to provide that to the nonprofits. And we're going to kind of help keep those meetings going so that they can talk amongst themselves to figure out, one, do they want to move forward with doing this, and two, who's the best organization to serve in that role as the broker to implement this plan. And I think we walked into that meeting thinking that we had probably one that would be really interested in it and others that might be more apprehensive. And I think when we came out of it, we were pretty impressed with how receptive all of the nonprofits in that room were. So we've got a great group of people that are doing really great work that aren't on this side of things, but our communities are really strong because we've got that stuff going on together. So this really is just informative. There's, we aren't anticipating that NERC is the broker or operator of any of this, but it's something that we saw a need, and that was actually even a few staff changes ago that this need was sort of first identified. So we were glad to be able to sort of see this through to this point and help foster the next part of the discussion. So if anybody has any questions on any of that, I'm happy to answer those.
Questions, comments?
You started with 22 nonprofits.
Yes.
And you have less interested, right? The second listing, are those the ones that are disinterested in this?
So we started with 22 that were just sort of said, sure, I'd be interested in having a conversation about transportation.
Okay.
Yeah. And then through responses to the survey and through the interviews, that was kind of narrowed down. So some of the groups that maybe didn't make as much sense for a pilot program would include a domestic violence shelter or a substance abuse recovery organization. For those groups to share rides becomes really complicated because now all of a sudden you've got them in the mix with seniors, disability, perhaps children, and you've got kind of sensitive populations that maybe their starting or ending location is something that needs to kind of remain a little more private, and a shared ride might not be the best idea for that. So some of them were kind of narrowed out by what they
Did they choose to not continue, or did you guys just determine it was not best?
It was, we did ask them if they wanted to continue, and there was no guarantee to any of them that they would be at the next round of this. But generally speaking, certainly with the kind of more sensitive populations, they were fairly vocal about, this might not be the best fit for them right now, the way it's structured.
Okay, so of your 22 interested initially, how many were in each county? Like, what was the spread there?
So it was Lake and Porter counties, not DePort County.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
We did talk to Paladin as well, which is important.
We did talk about Paladin.
Yeah, I don't remember the spread between the two counties. It was pretty evenly distributed. The way that we developed the initial list was through the community foundations for each county, Lake County and Porter County. And so they kind of sent out an invitation to their entire constituency, all the nonprofits that they work with the broad outline of what the study is. And yeah, certain groups said, yeah, I'd love to be interested, or I'd love to participate. So we did interview them, but it turned out, yeah, there were issues with sensitive populations, but there were also issues or situations where they said, yeah, we're interested. We don't have any buses. We have nothing to contribute, but if this ever got off the ground, we would like to be a part of it. So based on that, we kind of said there was 6 organizations that have the structures and capacity in place that could actually do something. They could pool their resources. They have the resources. And so that's kind of what we did. And we informed all the other participants, hey, thank you for your input. We're moving forward with this other group. If this gets off the ground, there may be an opportunity in the future for you to join in some way.
Why was LaPorte County not included? They just
I think it was primarily because, when the study was originally developed, the scope, none of us were actually here, but that was primarily a geographic reason because they're sort of isolated, Michigan City and LaPorte, from sort of the concentration of population and nonprofits in Lake County and Porter County. Is there a particular organization that you would like?
So occasionally we have people who reach out to us who are looking at how to get folks into Chicago, right? There's agencies we work with to give them like discounted ticket purchases, or Work One might need to get someone into Chicago for an interview, so they can send a purchase order to us and we'll just get that person on the train and get them their 2-way ticket. But they need help getting to the trains. We look for these organizations that are going to help these communities to connect these individuals to what it is they're trying to access. I see a lot more of it in Porter County than Porter and Lake. So
A
it's
lot more
interesting.
need
A lot more requests come through.
from individuals or
So
from
and
organizations?
that doesn't mean that the needs not necessarily. I see some in St. Joe too. But like travel nursing has become like a huge thing I've noticed, especially in South Bend, where these nurses are taking the trains to go into these jobs in Chicago and working those 12-hour shifts, so it's easier for them to hop on the train. And they make more money by doing that travel nursing. You know, if you're 50 miles away, or some of them are 25 or 30, you can make those higher salaries for being out of the region and going and doing that. So they're trying to connect these individuals to those opportunities. And so it's just something that I don't know how, honestly, I've been the one who's been contacted at NICD. I just get these community groups who are reaching out and trying to help figure out how to best connect. So it's interesting. A few years ago, Gary reached out, and but just to get tickets, but they primarily use GPTC if necessary to get folks to the train, and then we help get them to the city and back for those interviews. But LaPorte County has been the one where the need is identified, and I don't necessarily know if they're outside of Michigan City's transit service area. I don't have another option for them per se.
Oddly, we've been contacted, not for obviously for getting to the train, but in terms of just general transportation of clients and students and kids by groups in both Lake and Porter County. We've done some actual logistical work for probably several of the agencies that were in this original survey, and probably some of the ones that were, continuing to work in that route. But yeah, there are organizations in Porter County that are just beyond our service area, both current and proposed service area in Lake County, that we've had a couple of Zoom meetings with. And like I said, I provided some GIS information for Voice of Rosebud and organizations in Northern Hamilton and Whiting area. So obviously the needs and logistics are there. And it's a conversation that doesn't begin or end short of the designated recipients, because obviously they come to us with some of these questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments, sir?
Will the presentation be posted on WhatsApp? I got a call from my board president. I couldn't say, hey, I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, we can put, I mean, the final report will be issued
Right.
within weeks.
Okay.
This week. And at that point, that report will be posted on the website. That'll probably be more informative than the presentation, but we could put that in there, and we can put this up as well. If that's something we can also email it to you if you want to.
You go ahead. I know my GOs have questions on this process.
Well, thank you. It's got a lot of potential, and I'm glad to see that there's a collaboration going on with all those individuals.
I think that there's some good energy and motivation from them, so it'd be nice to see how that turns out.
Before we begin with the next section, I'd like to do introductions. I think everybody's settled, and I'll start with myself. I'm Kevin Weisky, Porter County Surveyor, chairman of this meeting.
Tom Vanderwood, nursing staff.
Floor Baum, nursing staff.
I'm Danielle Hayes with Directman, Indiana. I'm the Communications and Marketing Coordinator. Ryan's actually out at an ILD meeting in Barrows Farm, so I'm just stepping in.
Dean Wright, Gary Transit.
Dean Hutchins, City of Hammond.
Jessica Lewis, City of Hammond.
Lisa Schrader, NDOT Newport District.
Andy Vasquez, Porter County Council.
George Stoffel, Union Township Trustee in Porter County.
Kelly Wenger, Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District.
Martin Bobchick, Porter County Highway Engineering.
Candace Eklund, Emergency Staff.
Julie Ritzler, NDOT support.
Charles Bransky, Emergency Staff.
Chris Murphy, Structure Point.
John Kennedy, Structure Point.
Alex Hosberg, Public Clearance Cypher.
Scott Pruitt, First Group Engineering.
Stephen Hughes, Emergency.
I think we got everybody. Thank you. It helps us with our attendance. Let your bosses know you're here. Next, we'll do the new NERC committee structure presented by Mr. Madhu. This is also informational.
I'm gonna need some help figuring out how to make this appear on the screen. I'm gonna do that.
Stephen's coming.
Just do this like. Oh. Okay, so this presentation is about committee restructuring. I'm going to just talk a little bit about our existing committee structure and then about the direction that we're taking at the request and direction of our commission. They've been reviewing how we conduct business here through our committees and have asked that we streamline our committee structure a little bit. So I'm just going to talk a little bit today about overall committee structure, but then also how it relates to this particular technical planning committee. So as a bit of background, NERC has three areas of influence, which is established in our state legislation. Those are planning for transportation, the environment, and for economic development. And those are all three related to kind of like a specific federal program that we receive funding for and we distribute funding for. And for transportation, you know, we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So for those of you who have been part of this committee for a while, you know that we have core products that we're responsible for: a Unified Planning Work Program, a Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and a Transportation Improvement Program. And those are the three items that you take action on an annual basis and sometimes more frequently. For the environment, we focus on clean air and brownfields, and that's through funding and responsive to the Environmental Protection Agency. And with economic development, we are a designated economic development district, so we are required to do certain things for the Economic Development Administration, including the preparation and maintenance of a comprehensive economic development strategy, also known as a CEDS. In 2015, the committee structure of NERC was radically changed into what we have today. And it was really based on this graphic here, which showed a number of different, I'll just kind of point it out to you and show you all kind of know it, but I just can I use that? Yeah. So you have a number of subcommittees or topical committees that flow into the Technical Planning Committee, which is a requirement of the status as a Metropolitan Planning Organization. And then those recommendations are endorsed by the TPC and then submitted to the NERC board for final approval. In addition to that, there were committees established for outreach, for local government assistance, for the legislative work, and then our Finance and Personnel Committee, which approves and reviews contracts and things like that. So as you can see, there were a lot of different groups that we needed to find staff and interested members for. So how did all those groups relate to those statutory areas that we talked about? Well, with transportation, we had the Technical Planning Committee, the TROC, Transportation Resource and Oversight Committee, the STC, the Surface Transportation Committee, Pedal and Paddle, and then the Transit Operators Roundtable. And that has independent in parentheses because that was not considered a topical committee, it's just sort of a working group. With the environment, there's really one committee that related to it, which is the EMPC. And then with economic development, there were actually initially 3 groups that supported that area, freight, land use, and local government assistance. But then as the years passed, 2 additional groups were added, the Economic Development District and the Revolving Loan Fund. And then finally, not related to our federal work, there was a kind of a subset called Leadership, which included the Finance and Personnel Committee, the Legislative Committee, and the Outreach Committee. So as you can see, we have 14 different groups, all of which needed interested members of our region, residents and stakeholders and commissioners. And that became a little bit unwieldy, and I think those of you who have been participating in the committees know that especially since 2020, we've had kind of a decline in participation. Some of you have found yourselves going to every committee meeting, and others have not attended any. So given all that, we received direction from the commissioners to establish a new committee structure. So what this is kind of a compression of the old 2015 structure. And we're keeping the same 4 kind of buckets, but we're just pushing some of these groups into together. So we're compressing the Surface Transportation Committee, the Paddle Committee, and the Technical Planning Committee into a single overarching committee called the Transportation Committee. The EMPC, Environmental Management and Policy Committee, will essentially stay the same. It'll just be called the Environment Committee. There will be a new committee established called Economy in Place, which will include land use and local government assistance. It will also include the Economic Development District. And then there will be a singular group called Leadership, which will include finance and personnel, legislative, and outreach. So this structure, this broad structure, was adopted by the full commission on April 18, and our intent is to implement it in July of this year, so next month. There are a few groups in here that you may be wondering where did they go, such as the T-Rock group. That will remain sort of as one of those independent groups. It will be considered a quasi-working group, subcommittee, but it will still remain in place to evaluate project change proposals and review the NOFA and things like that. Again, just by way of background, those 4 categories, those focus areas are rooted in our, we didn't just pull them out of the air, they're rooted in our 2050 plan. So they've kind of been the guiding rubric that we've been using for the past, I guess almost, 8 years? All right, so what does that mean for the Technical Planning Committee? It will basically change into the Transportation Committee, and as I said, it will incorporate the roles that were previously held by the Surface Transportation Committee and the Paddle Committee. So right here is essentially the list of roles and responsibilities. I don't know if I really need to go through this, all of it. A lot of it is the same. I will say that there are a couple things that I do want to point out with respect to changes, and those are related to performance measures. So if you were a member of the Surface Transportation Committee, you know that a lot of your work and the information that you received were related to the federally mandated performance measures for congestion, safety, and kind of highway performance. So those activities will be taken from the STC, which will be dissolved, and we'll expect to see that those will come to the Transportation Committee. So additional actions that will be required here will be adoption of those targets, and then you will be receiving regular presentations on our progress towards hitting those targets for those performance measures. And then the other thing that is kind of new about the Transportation Committee is, if you think of how we've done solicitations for projects for our Transportation Improvement Program, the current structure calls for each one of our topical committees to review applications for specific funding categories and then make recommendations. Ultimately, they kind of flow through the TREC and then into TPC. So since those committees are going to be dissolved, our expectation is that we will kind of keep those groups. They just won't be considered committees. They'll sort of be ad hoc working groups. So they'll sort of be established for the purposes of the NOFA and then kind of dissolved once that's over. And I guess our position on that is that it really makes sense because that's when the bulk of the work was really happening at those groups. And then on off years when there was no NOFA, we were kind of searching to find things to keep those groups occupied. So that will continue. All of those groups will be sort of created by the Transportation Committee. So the members of this group will say, we need a subcommittee or a working group to look at this particular issue. They'll create it, it'll do its work, and then it'll go away. And that way we kind of keep it focused on who's actually interested and qualified to work on any particular project. So the membership of the Transportation Committee will mirror the existing TPC. A couple changes I will point out. We have increased the membership of commissioners. There were previously, I believe, 4 commissioners per county, so we're increasing that to 5 per county, so we'll have 15 commissioners total. The transit operator membership will remain the same, as well as the Northwest Indiana Forum, INDOT, NICD, the direct recipients, Federal Highway, FTA. Some additions that we'll have to this group will be 1 representative of a bicycle advocacy group. That's to sort of recognize that there was a voice at the Pedal and Paddle Committee that will no longer be there. We'll also be permitting 1 county parks representative. Again, that's carryover from the 3PC. We're also adding some kind of quasi-public sector members. That would be the Indiana Toll Road, Ports of Indiana, and then a freight industry representative. And then we're also adding, which is a throwback actually, if you recall, to our old Transportation Policy Committee, our regional NPO partners in Southwest Michigan and Northeastern Illinois. And then finally, although Drive Clean Indiana has a name tag, they're technically not a member in any way of this committee, but they will be added as a non-voting member to the Transportation Committee. So that's it in a nutshell. I know it's not the most interesting topic, no graphics to review, but I'll take any questions and any comments that you may have. Again, I'll just say that this was approved conceptually by the Commission 2 months ago, and the staff has kind of been tasked to work out some of the details. So if there is any input, I would be happy to take it at this time.
Mr. Vasquez.
I just have a question. I've been trying to find out how to get on committees because I'm here to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. So once this is implemented, I imagine that there'll be a survey distributed to the commissioners requesting your interest in different committees, and then the chairman will make appointments to the individual committees.
Thank you.
Will this committee have a quorum requirement?
Yeah, it's going to be the same. Quorum of majority, no less than 3.
Okay. Does your quorum include the non-voting or not? Just the
No,
voting members?
It would be voting members.
Okay. How many voting members are on there? I keep trying to count it and then I keep
18,
forgetting.
19, 22. 28. So that's why there's a very low quorum set, and our hope is that we have a full room, but in the event that only a few people or members show up, at least this has been the philosophy in the past, we need to conduct business. So, for example, if there's a TIF amendment that needs to take place, we need to conduct business. We can't say, well, we don't have a quorum of 17 people, and so therefore we're not going to do our TIF amendment. We're going to keep going, and I guess the idea is if you're interested in participating, you need to attend, but you can't, I guess the idea is that we're not going to allow people's lack of attendance to prevent us from moving forward with it.
Okay, so while there's a quorum, it's,
Well, it's there, less than 3.
It's more than likely we'll have a quorum that way because attendances have been diminishing across the board. We need more activity. COVID really did a number, I think. We had a lot of energy before because we went from 2040 plan to 2050 plan. A lot of very active people, but I think it's dropped off some of it. This is a positive thing, particularly from staff standpoint. They're getting burned out. They're handling so many committees, trying to keep them going during off years, which is unnecessary. So I think overall this will benefit the region.
Yeah, and I think what we want to do is make sure that rather than sort of dilute the activities through different groups, just kind of concentrate all these activities into single meetings so that the members, especially when they come here, they feel like, okay, I don't have to go to this meeting for this subject, that meeting for that one, and so on, be here 3 times a month. I can come to a single meeting, I can get the information that I need, and then I can take the action that I need to take, and I can move on.
So bear in mind, the actions we take are recommendations to the commission. And they can't get their work done unless we have our work done and make that recommendation. So this is what we're pressing forward with this board philosophy. Any other questions or comments? David?
There should be some consideration for the airport. I mean, it's pretty much a creation of the state at this point. I think there's a governor appointee, if I remember correctly. I don't have the structure by heart. And right now it's the second busiest freight airport in the state. So that should be looked at with some consideration.
Yeah, thanks, that's a good point. We did talk about that, didn't necessarily rule it out, but I think we're open to that.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing seeing none, I think you're up to it now.
Okay. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me at the address on the screen.
I want to move on to the topical committee reports. Maybe we should begin by having Charles speak to the RSA, the road safety audits.
Okay.
I nominate.
So we did, we are doing, as everybody knows, we are doing road safety audits. For locations, we're doing 8 to 10 annually. We did have 6 different communities. We went through the list of locations, and we had 6 different communities submit 13 locations. So we are looking at which ones are going to be the best ones going forward. Some of them are on state routes, some of them are already part of other plans. So we probably will exclude those. But we will get with our consultants, do have a consultant chosen. We will get with them probably towards the end of the month and work out which ones we want to be done. Road safety audits for them. And those will start in July. And it is our intent that we'll have road safety audits for those locations. We'll get with your communities, whether it be it would be one of your emergency chiefs, either your fire or police chief, and the city engineer, the county engineer, the county engineer, whatever it may be, to meet here at MERC initially, and then do site visits. And we'll work that out later on, and we'll of course keep everybody informed. And hopefully and then we will have road safety audits to give everybody by the start of the NOFA. So you'll know immediately how you sit when you're filling out your NOFA application. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Charles?
I have one question. You mentioned that the community submitted their suggestions and that some were state routes.
A couple of them were state routes.
And you would rule that out, but was that shared with?
We haven't gotten that.
Okay.
We haven't got that far.
Are you planning to share it? Because it might be helpful, especially with all of the safety focus.
One of them was on US 30, which is already part of the Propel 30.
Right.
So I imagine that one will most likely won't do a road safety audit if obviously NDOT already has a firm looking at that.
Okay. But if there's any other areas, I'm just suggesting that it would be a good idea to communicate with the district on.
Yes, and if there's something, we will definitely share that with Sarah's group.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Hill?
Is there a list that's available to see as what the location might be?
we don't have that list. We will provide that list after the 1st of July.
And on a personal note, are there any in Union Township?
No.
Okay.
Maybe in the future.
Dean.
Stay tuned, folks.
Are we involving LTAP at all? Because I know that they're a good resource to help with road safety audits.
We are working with LTAP, but we did hire a consultant to do the road safety audits. When we started out, we didn't have the staff to do that. Initially, way back when I started this, we were going to do this in-house and work closely with LTAP, but then as it went on, we ended up by just hiring a consultant to conduct these, but yes, we are working with LTAP because there are some information that we need to gather prior, so we're working with LTAP on doing.
They were great. We did 2 road safety audits a few years ago with LTAP, and they were terrific to help out.
And we've been to some road safety audit trainings that they've had, so they've been great.
I'm glad you mentioned it. Yes. And thank you, Dean, for bringing that up as well. It's about partnerships and collaboration, and LTAP's an excellent resource for anybody that works in transportation. Any other questions for Charles?
While I'm up here and I have the pulpit, next week we were planning on having a T-Rock working group. I've canceled that T-Rock working group. We were going to try to look at the next few years on our funding, but the status of our TIP is still up in the air, and there are other things that we are working on, other solutions that we're working on. So having the meeting next week is premature and really nothing could get solved. So we canceled that. And I am not going to make, once we get the TIP approved, And then we'll start looking at whether or not we need to meet, this working group needs to meet. So I will definitely keep everybody, I'm not going to schedule it the next day, so I'll definitely get it out, set up a time a couple weeks into the future, after everything has, the dust has been settled and the cake has been eaten.
I think all we're waiting for are a couple signatures. We're optimistic it's going to be done.
Yes, it'll get done soon. It'll be approved soon.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for keeping at it. Also today, many of you will be getting an email from the agency, NERC, for a request for local transportation projects for the Legislative Study Committee. Funding Indiana roads for a stronger, safer tomorrow. First task force. Tom, can you enlighten us a little bit more what they're asking for?
Yes, yeah, so NERC staff met with Representative Russell and Soliday a few months ago, and they are participating in this first task force, which will be meeting this summer, and developing a list, or I guess a set, like a funding recommendation for, and to be honest with you, it's kind of murky as far as what they're doing, but basically they're looking at the existing formulas for funding transportation projects in the state and trying to determine whether or not it's meeting the actual needs that are out there in our local communities. So what they've asked us to do, and we're really just acting as a messenger on this, they've asked us to reach out to our local governments and counties, and we're just asking for really a list of needed projects in your community. And I think there's only really 3 pieces of information that we need. What is the project? Or where's the project? What is the type of project? And how much is your estimated cost? And it's not like we don't need a detailed engineering estimate. We really just need kind of a ballpark figure. And we would encourage communities to look out, maybe don't look out to 2050 plus, but look out at least maybe 10 years and think about what projects you really need to do. So that's an email that went out from NERC through our constant contact. There's a fillable form on there, so you just fill it in, and it'll automatically get sent to us. We're asking, we actually sent it out already. This is the second time we're sending it out, but we're asking for responses by June 14, so I believe that's next Friday. If you receive it, please either fill it out or pass it along to somebody in your community that has that information, whether it's your city engineer or county surveyor or somebody.
Not the county surveyor, the county highway engineer, the city engineer.
Yeah, so look for that email.
The title of that was?
It's Request for Transportation Projects for the First Task Force Legislative Study Committee.
It'll help out over state legislators quite a bit. And might impact how they draw up the formulas that they're going to use in the future. So, please.
Okay. 2 other announcements, just staff announcements. One, a number of NERC staff and representatives from local governments attended a regional safety summit at the INDOT Work District office last week. And one item to note, there's a lot of good information that was distributed and discussed about INDOT's kind of priorities regarding funding safety projects. But they also informed us that there will be a call for projects for HSIP funding this summer. I don't know if you have any information about that, Lisa, but the details I don't think have been sent out yet.
Right, there's more to come on that. They're still planning the initiative. To be quite honest, I don't have any additional information other than it's coming.
Okay. Yeah, so the only thing I know about that is there will be an announcement this summer at some point. It will be for safety projects funded through HSIP, and it will be for urban and rural projects. So that's unusual that they're funding projects in the urban area, but they will be issuing that call this summer. And then I just have one other sad announcement. Some of you may know Scott Weber resigned from NERC to take a position in the private sector. His last day was a week ago. So we're obviously sad to see him go, but wish him the best in his new endeavor. And in that position, he will be, he'll be working for the Corradino Group, and he'll be working in this area, so northern Indiana and northern Illinois. So we do expect to see him around, possibly as a member of this committee in the future. But just FYI, if you have specific modeling requests, I would say hold on to them for the time being because we don't have the capacity to fulfill those. But we are going to be, we've got some options for getting that work done in the future, so just stay posted on that.
Best wishes to Tom, or to Scott, I mean. Thank you, Tom.
It just goes to show that NERC puts together great people
Yeah.
and that they can move on to new and bigger and better opportunities. I mean, we have that, I think most communities deal with that, right? We always have the transition and turnover. And Scott's a wonderful person, did a great work here. So it's good to see him improve on, and I'm sure we'll make more improvements and have new people to do good work for you guys here at NERC.
From your lips to God's ears. But we have had a lot of good people come through this agency. We appreciate it. I never worry about them being coached because that's what really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Make them better people, make them an asset to the region. Do we have any other committee reports today? Any at all? I do know EMTC is meeting this Thursday, and they will have a deliberation about the notice of funding availability as pertains to the environmental issues. They're not being restricted. Well, I got noticed. My mistake.
Is it a work group or
It may be a work group.
EMPC.
Okay. Never mind. Things are very dynamic here. We're constantly changing.
No meeting.
No meeting.
No EMPC.
No meeting first.
Okay, all meetings will be posted on the website, so if you have any doubt, go to the website and it's out there.
Stand by.
And we will not have a meeting in July here. Our next meeting will be August 6th. And the upcoming NERC meetings will be held on June 20th. Finance and Personnel and the NERC Executive Board will meet June 20th, 2024. The Executive Board will meet at 9 o'clock a.m. Anything else good for the cause? Oh, we do have somebody here from Drive Clean Indiana.
Thank you. I was just about to speak up. So I do have a report from Brian Lissig. We do have available grant funding. We have the 2024 EPA Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles Grant. There is $932 million available for Class 6 and 7 GVWR replacements with electric and hydrogen vehicles. Applications are due July 25th, and handouts are available. I have a lot of paperwork if anybody is interested in anything I say. There is the second round of CFI grants. It is 80% funding towards clean fuel infrastructure related to EV charging, LPG, CNG, hydrogen fueling, and infrastructure. Over $1.3 billion is available. Applications are due for round 2 on August 28th. Round 1, non-awarded applicants July 1st, and I do have more handouts. And we do have the IOED EPIC grant funding. On March 4th it begins, and deadline is May 1st with a letter of intent due, and June 30th is the second deadline with the full application. The award amount is no minimum or maximum, but Indiana OED anticipates an average of 300 to 500,000. Eligible entities include local units of government, nonprofits, for-profits, and institutions of higher education. Entities that work throughout a community or region and can coordinate partnerships are strongly encouraged, such as local and regional economic development organizations. There are priorities of energy efficiency, energy security and reliability, alternative fueling and infrastructure, clean energy resources as well. For our updates, there is the EPA Clean Ports Program for $3 billion. We applied for 2 projects, inclusive of Ports of Indiana and IDEM projects. We requested $43 million, and awards should come out in October of this year. There was the final round of Indiana VW settlement funding. We submitted 12 projects for a total cost of over $14 million. The City of Gary with 4 CNG trucks, GPTC 4 electric buses, School City of East Chicago 5 LPG buses, and the City of Hobart with 2 LPG buses. Awards announced within probably about 2 weeks. The EPA Clean School Bus Rebate, we have 51 school buses awarded for Indiana with a total of $11 million funding, over $11 million. And we helped with all of these except for one throughout the state of Indiana. And there is the 2023 National DARE program, submitted 4 programs with an ask of $12.6 million and total projects cost of $39.4 million. This focuses on Class 4 through 8 GVWR heavy-duty vehicles and heavy-duty off-road equipment, and we were awarded all 4 projects. Electric vehicle charger reliability and accessibility accelerator grant was submitted with IDEM and INDOT, awarded $778,000 with 55 port replacements. Contractual documents of award should come about July this year. And we do have upcoming events as well, of course. We have the 2024 Indiana Rural Energy Tour on the 4th. We have Partners for Clean Air Luncheon at the Hammond Marina on the 14th. The 25th and the 26th is the In Climate Summit for Agriculture and Energy. And the 26th is the 3rd Annual EV Charging Infrastructure Midwest Conference, where Carl is presenting at. The 27th is the NWI Black Chamber of Commerce at IUN. On the 18th, we have Clean Air Day with the, Partners for Clean Air. So that's going to be at the Railcats game. And we do have Electrify Indiana down in Indianapolis coming up in the next couple of months. And then out looking further into the year, we do have, out in September, is the Drive Clean Indiana golf outing. If anybody is golfers in here, I highly encourage you to get registered because it's selling out fast. We have over 60 registrants already. We do have our EV workshop at NERC, which the announcement will be going out either this week or next week. We'll be doing a ride and drive right here at this location October 3rd, and we'll be doing a kind of forum as well to do some EV 101 and explanations to the local communities. And to finish off, we do have our Indiana Technology Conference that has just been announced. It is taking place in November of 2024, so we will be reaching out for sponsorships and attendance soon. And that is all I got. If your community is looking to implement any clean transportation activities, please reach out to Drive Clean Indiana. I do have several cards. I can keep you in contact with Ballistics. I'm just their sidekick, so I can get you to the right people. But yeah, it's nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And nice for you to be here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Question. Early on, you mentioned the charging and fueling infrastructure grant. And you briefly touched on a July 1st date for a submittal for previous applicants. Do you know more about that, or should I contact Brian to find out more information?
Probably, definitely, Brian would have the best answer. I'm gonna give you, he typed up these notes, so.
Yeah.
You'll get
But,
exactly.
but it sounds to me like there's a deadline of July 1st to submit on those who previously applied for the CFI. It was early on, it was like the second topic.
Was it the EV charger reliability and accessibility?
No, I think it was before that. You talked about how now that recently the government had said that the round 2 of CFI was open and it's due August 28th, but that something was due in July 1st.
There was for new applicants. The round 2 for new applicants is August 28th.
Right.
Applications for round 1 non-awarded applicants is July 1st.
That's a due date?
Yes,
For-
that's when the applications are due.
July 1st.
I do actually have handouts specifically on.
Thank you. I take it.
Of course.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else good for the
Where
cause?
can we find that information?
She'll give it to you.
Okay.
Yep, I have all of this stuff and then I'll give you my card as well.
Okay, do we have anything else? We don't have any planning partners here, as for mentioned, so. The next meeting we'll have is August 6th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Have a nice July. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.